Good evening, everyone. How you doing? Hope you're well. So welcome to this week's One Image My Edit. So this week I'm going to be showing you how to add some mood and drama to your landscape pictures. So I'm going to be showing you how to do some different settings within the basics module, tone curve, and a lot within the HSL as well. But basically I'm going to show you how to achieve something like this. So if this is very artistic in respect of the last couple of weeks, which I've been showing you how to do some dark and moody stuff. So last week it was the fox, and the week before that was a portrait. So I'm just going along them lines again and stepping into the realms of creativity. So by no means is this an edit that is correct, so to speak, because this is fine as it is. But I'm just going to show you how to make it a little bit more dramatic and a little bit more moody. Okay, right. So the first thing I'm going to do then within Lightroom is I'm just going to drop the exposure just a little bit, because obviously we're going for that dark and moody look. So I want it to be a little bit darker in general. Okay, and then obviously because we've dropped that, we need to then add some contrast back in. Now if we don't add the contrast back in, then it's going to start looking really, really flat. So I'm just going to boost that up and probably to around about there. I think that's good, not too much. And then highlights, I'm going to bring these down because what I want to do is try and separate that sky a little bit. So I'm going to bring these down only to about there for now. And again, I might come back to that later and just have a play around with it. In the shadows, even though we're darkening the whole image, I'm actually going to boost the shadows up because I'm going to counterbalance that later with the tone curve, with the contrasting tone curve. So I'm going to boost these up quite a bit because I want to keep detail and bring back some information within them shadows. So around there, something like that is good. And like I said, you know, when I come down to here later, you'll see why. But again, counterbalancing that with the whites, I'm going to bring them down. So this is going to make everything look a little bit darker. So around 36, 37, something like that. And the same with the blacks. So we're going to start pushing the blacks down as well, just to make it a little bit more moody. So I reckon about there, something like that. That looks good. So we're just starting to, you know, work this image, get it a little. Guys, sorry, my actual internet just went then. It completely dropped out. You should be able to see and hear everything now. Sorry about that, guys. Internet dropped out for some reason, but it didn't completely wipe out. Let me know if you can hear me okay. Just give me a thumbs up. Let me know you can hear me. and just let me know. Yeah. Yeah, I'm back. Cool. Right. Okay. So now we've done all that. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened there. Right. So I'm going to come into the tone curves, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of make some points here. Okay. So one there and sort of one down here. And what actually I might do is I'm just going to click on. So with the tone curve, you've got this option here. So if you click on the first one, you've got the sliders. And when you click, you can't. But if you click on that one there, then you can select and click wherever you want. Okay, so there's two different ways of using these. So that one, the first one is the sliders. And the one that I like to use the most is the next one in, because you can actually add these anchor points and you can start changing the tone curve. And the tone curve is a really, really good contrasting tool. And you can see here, there's the histogram. So we've got the grays here, we've got the blacks here, and we've got the blacks here, the grays here, and the whites here. So we can manipulate this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up the blacks here, and this is going to almost create an almost matte effect to the image. So I'm really crunching them down. I'm then going to come up to the blacks up here and just bring them down a little bit, and it's gonna just add a little bit more deeper information into the black areas there. So you can see it's actually, it's pushing the blacks back into the some of the darker areas. And then I think up here I'm going to do the same with the white. I'm going to bring the white down, and this again is going to create a matte effect to the image, and it's going to just help tone things down a little bit, and that's what gives you that cinematic look. So just playing around with them, and then the mid-tone to the grays, just a little bit down. Then we've got quite a steep kind of S-curve there, as you can see. And in fact, I might even bring these down a little bit more, just to add a little bit more drama to it. So that's looking quite good. And then what I'm going to do is, I think, with regards to the colors, I'm gonna leave the red. So I'm gonna come into the greens, and I'm gonna just add some more points here. Okay, so you can see I've just added them points there, and what I'm going to do is just bring them down a smidgen, and all I'm doing is just adding some magenta into the shadows and into the midtones. So it's just a little bit, not too much. There, that was a little bit too much then, and that's just going to add a little bit of magenta into the shadow areas. It's only subtle, but this will make more sense later, because I'm going to be showing you the calibration, and that will kind of work within this, so it goes hand in hand. Okay, so once we've done that, I think then I'm going to go into the blues, and I'm going to just try and add some blues into these shadows. And this is literally by eye, so it's just by eye, but you can see there, look, if I start pushing this up, I can kind of really manipulate the amount of blue that's in the image. And again, this is what gives us that real cinematic look, just by tweaking these. And it's just, each picture is going to be slightly different. Okay, obviously they're not all the same, are they? So I think something like that is quite good. That works quite well. So let's come down to the hue, saturation, and luminance. So we've got the hues. And what I'm going to do with this is manipulate these colors so we can change the hue. So what the hue actually means is, like, if you look at the red, you can see it starts from red and it goes up, and then it starts going into orange. And then you can see that obviously it falls down, that's orange, and that continues into yellow. So we can change these colors to either have more of the next color in. So if I want to make the reds more orange, I can. If I want to make them more red, I can. So I'm going to boost the reds up a little bit. Okay, something like that. I'm going to take some of the orange out, because going with a warm image, we kind of want to take out that warm kind of orange vibe. We don't really want that. But I'm going to boost the yellows up, because if you look, the actual grass is a greeny yellow color. So by boosting this up, I'm actually just changing the color of the grass. As you can see, it just keeps going up, and you can see, you know, even there, just from doing that, what it's done. Okay, so it's gone from that yellow, it's gone a little bit more green, which I prefer with this image. I don't think the yellow works. I think the green works better. The aqua, I'm going to push that up, because again, we're going for the cinematic look. So I want to get rid of any of the greens within the aqua range, and that's mainly for this kind of area up here. And then the blues, obviously, you know, we're going for that look, so I'm going to boost them quite high to around there. I think something about there. And again, the good thing is that you can always come back and change these and fine tune these later on when we want to. So the saturation then, how much of the color we want, so we can, you know, we can take color away, or we can boost up that saturation. So with the yellows, I'm going to push them up and just see what happens as I keep going. As you can see there, it's starting to add a little bit more life back into the shot. Now, so the luminance is the brightness of it. Sorry, we're in the saturation, and I'm looking at the wrong one. The saturation, yeah. So we're just kind of, yeah, boosting that color up, and it just helps you control. So like the green there, we can kind of, if we bring this down, you can see it's just going to tone down them green shades a little bit. And I reckon around 47, something like that for now. And then the aqua, I'm going to counterbalance from the hue and bring that down. Okay, so it's a balancing act. All of these three are balancing acts. And I'll show you all three once I've done it, and you'll see kind of what the sequence is and why I've done it. The blues, again, I'm going to bring them down. So even though we've changed the hue, I'm now just changing the saturation of that particular color. So I reckon around there, that's looking good. And then I think purple, I don't think there's a lot of purple in there, so let's just take that out. And there's no magenta, but I'm going to take that out anyway. Okay, so let's go to the luminance, which is the brightness of the color, which I was got confused in the last one. So this is the brightness. So let's have a look at the reds. Now, you may not see a lot of red in there, but it is in there. So I'm just going to bring that down a little bit. Same with the orange. Again, if you look at the grass, if we just bring that down, it will just help make it a little bit more subtle. And the yellows as well, I'm going to bring them down to around there, something like that. And the greens, because if we look at the greens, you can see now where we're having quite a dramatic effect on them greens. So I think if we bring them down to around there, that's quite nice. That works well. Aqua, again, I'm going to bring that down quite a bit to around there. And the blue as well, I'm going to bring that right down, and you'll start to see this is starting to look a little bit more moody and a little bit more life to it. So now we've done all that, if I click on all, you'll be able to see what I've done. So if you look at the hues and then look at the saturation and luminance, so the hues is basically just changing what that color appears to be, and then with the saturation we're just bringing that down. So we're bringing the brightness of the colors down that we've boosted up here. Okay, and the luminance of it as well. So the luminance is the brightness, the saturation is how much of that color is in there. So for instance, you know, if I go to the yellow and just completely take it out, you'll see there there's literally hardly any color in the picture now. So that's what that does. So let me just boost this back up, and it's around there, something like that. Okay, but remember that this is working with this as well. Okay, so when I'm messing around with the tone curve, that is my base. That's what I'm starting from, and then I use this as a framework for these. Okay, so let's go into the color grading, because this is where we can start adding a little bit more drama to the actual shot now. So we've got the mid-tone shadows and highlights, and we can just select them individually up here. We can see them as a group. So let's just go to the shadows, and what I'm going to do is add a blue hue to it. Now we can just click on here if we wanted to, and just click there. That gives you a good starting point. They're the most sort of common shades, but we can see here it says hue 215 and the saturation 50. So you can use that as a reference point, you know, for when you're editing. And if you look, as I slide, the saturation is changing, and then when I move it left and right, the hue is changing. Okay, you can see the numbers down there. So I know that 222 is a really 222 is kind of a shade of blue that I quite like, and saturation of around 100. So it's quite heavy. That's quite a heavy, you know, quite a heavy edit. But again, we can change these and manipulate these a little bit. So let's go to the highlights now. And what I'm going to do with this is, if we're looking at the color wheel, we're going to try and work on the opposite side of the color wheel. Okay, so you can, you know, that's the most basic way of color theory. There's lots of other different things we can do, but if we know that the blue was around here, we want to be working around here because it's the opposite, and that gives you a harmonized picture then. Okay, so let's have a look at this, and I think I'm going to go with something around there, right there, something like that. But this, I think I'm just going to bring the saturation back a little bit, because I don't want it to be too warm. I don't want it just to be a hint of yellow rather than too overpowering. Okay. Now, what I can do as well is change the blending and the balance of all of these. So if I push that blending there, you see it's going to go more blue. If I go this way, that's going to be more yellow. And then the balance of the two. So you can see there, look, obviously more blue, more yellow. So we can fine tune these and get the exact look we want. At the minute, I'm going to leave that as it is and possibly come back to that later on. All right. So let's scroll down. I mean, we can add some sharpening if we want. Doesn't need it really, but you can add that. And if we come down, so I'm going to ignore these. Don't need the transform or the effects or anything like that. In fact, I'll get rid of the sharpening and lens correction. Don't need to worry about any of that at the minute. So I'm going to be working on this here. Now, what this is, the calibration, this is the core of the image. So you've got the primary colors, red, green, and blue. And by adjusting these, we are changing almost the building blocks of the whole of the image. So let's go to the reds and look at this hue here. So we've got the hue. So let's bring that down. And again, this is working in tandem with all the other colors that I've been working with previously. So, you know, there's method to this madness. Okay, there's method to it. So I'm bringing these reds right down. And the greens, so we've done a lot of manipulation with the greens, but I'm still going to bring them down a little bit so they're not as strong and it's not as powerful. But we can boost the saturation up, and you can see what that does. It just gives a deeper look, which I think makes it a little bit more realistic. even though we're doing a really extreme edit, and it's very very artistic. Okay, and then the blues, if we come to the hue, look, we can decide what we want these hues to be. So I could bring that down to here, I could boost it up, and you can see the different effects that I'm going to get just on that grass. So, you know, that to me is too garish, it's too green. So I actually prefer images a little bit less. I'm taking that out, and what that's doing is actually introducing a little bit of red. So even though that wasn't in the shot, it's actually quite nice, because red's the most sensitive color to the eye, and we can use this to manipulate how we view the image. Okay, right. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do some manipulation now. I might come back here and change a few of these in a bit, but I think the sky could be separate a little bit. We can make it a little bit more blue. So I'm going to come up to the graduate filter up here. I'm going to click and drag down. Okay, and now I'm going to go to range mask, and we've got the option of color or luminance. So we can select, get the little dopper here, and we can click. So we can actually click and drag, and it will select a big area rather than just clicking. Now the problem is with color is that there's blue and white in there, but it's picking up some of this. So if we change that to luminance, which is brightness, we can then we can change that. So we can select, or we can change the range here. And if you look, as I move this range, if you look at these rocks up here, okay, you'll see, look, so there's more selection. Okay, so I can get this just right so that these rocks aren't then affected, and the smoothness as well. Let's see if I push that down. Now we've pretty much got all the sky. This bit isn't being selected, but that's fine. If we wanted to, we could, you can click on the show luminance mask there, and that will give you an idea of what is selected. Okay, you can carry on just doing that, or you can just click until you're happy, and you can see all the different selections that you would get. Okay, so that really helps. It really helps just select some of the sky. So now we've done that, we can, you know, if we come back to color, for instance, we can change that as well. So you've got a few different options there. Okay, like I said, you can just click and drag, and it will give you that nice selection there. Okay, right. So if if we look at the mask overlay, I've taken that off. Now if you look, it says color here. If I click on that, okay, and it's quite hidden, this, it says color. If you then click on that, well, watch what happens to the sky. You can now basically input a color into that sky. Okay, and you don't have to click on these. You can obviously, you could have a purple sky if you wanted to. It's entirely up to you, but I'm going to go for the real dark blue. Oh no, I think the light blue. And you can move this slider as well, and that will give you saturation. Okay, so the hue is the color, and then you've got the saturation of that, so how much of that you want. And I think just a little bit more blue than what they were, so around there, that's pretty good. And then select done. And then I think the next thing is to think about these rock formations here, or these mountains. So if we click on the brush tool, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to leave it on whatever one it's selected, because we can change it afterwards anyway. Going to click on the show selected mask overlay so I can see where I'm painting. Feather and flow are really high, and density, I'm going to bring that down a little bit so it's not as hard and as dense. And I'm just going to start painting in. So I'm going to select these rocks here and make the brush a little bit smaller by changing the bracket keys, and also auto mask is selected, so that will hopefully help you not spill over into the sky, so you can see Lightroom's doing some algorithms and some bits and bobs, and it means that that we're not going to spill over into that sky, which is good, and that's what we want. So by selecting these here, we can then again manipulate these and just make these stand out a little bit more. So what I'm doing is mainly working on where the shadows are. Okay, so where the shadows lie within this picture. But I'm also gonna darken, I think, this area here as well. Okay, so at the minute I'm just selecting areas that I want to be dark. Okay, so something around there. And then if we look, there's highlight coming in here and around here, but there's some areas here that I wouldn't mind actually darkening, so where the actual natural shadows are. So you can see here, yeah, that's quite cool. And there, and then do you remember I said about we can use color to manipulate the eye? Well, if I select this area here, okay, so I'm going to make these things darker, and then this area down here, okay, so let me push the density up for this. So around here, okay. So what I'm going to be doing is using that as a lead-in line up to this point up here. Okay, so let me just make that a little bit more dense. So now we've got the selection. That's good. Okay, maybe add in a little bit more down here. So now we've got the selection. Now we can decide what we want to do. So we don't have to decide beforehand. We can just make the selection. So let's have a look at the saturation. We look at that. I think pulling the saturation out, so there's not any color in there, just pull that right out. We can have a look at the clarity, so we can pull that right down as well. That will help just soften it a little bit. And we can also use the dehaze as well. We can use that to our advantage. We can, you know, obviously push that up, pull it down. It really depends, you know, what you want to do. I think around there, and then just bring that color temperature down a little bit. So that's quite nice. So that gives us, if we look at the actual selection there, you can see that's what we've done. We've just darkened them areas there. And then I think what we could do is use the Radial Tool as well. So now I think actually just selecting some of the highlighted areas and increasing the color temperature. So I'm just going to click and drag. This gives you that radial. And I think obviously around there, that's where the main light is coming in. You can see there it's on that rock front there as well. So just there to start with. And you can see if you click on the show selected mask overlay, you've also got the invert option there. So you need to click that if you want to make adjustments just inside, which is obviously what we want to do. I'm going to push the feather up to not 100, about 80, something like that, just so it's not a hard edit. And doing something similar what we just done within the dark areas, but this time I'm going to increase the color temperature because it is warmer there, isn't it? It's obviously a little bit more sunnier. Let's have a look at this saturation, bring that down a little bit more so we can bump that up a little bit. And a bit like what I done last week, if you watched last week's One Image My Edit with the Fox, so brought clarity down and the dehaze as well. So we're kind of doubling up on that from doing this from the brush tool and this. So we're yeah, like I said, we're going to double up on that. So just bring that down and you can see how soft that makes it. Now, not too much. And then dehaze as well. Now let's just see what that does. So too much, it's only a little bit. I think maybe pull that clarity back up a little bit there. So if we look at this color temperature, you can see what that's doing. and I think it needs to be about there. So what I'm going to do now is, because I know them settings are right, I'm going to feather that actually a lot more. So I'm going to right click and click duplicate, and then I'm going to move that one so we've got the same happening here. So I'm going to use this over, let's have a look. In fact, I might do 2 or 3. So I'm going to select that area there. And then what I might actually do is just bump the exposure up a little bit. And I might do that on the previous one as well. So let's have a look at that. Yeah, that's cool. So let's go back to this one. Just boost that exposure up just a smidgen. Right click, duplicate again. And let's bring that over here. Really narrow that light field. So we're just trying to mimic and pick up where the sun's rays are. And maybe just increase that color temperature a little bit more there. Okay. Right. So if we look at that now, okay, let's have a look at a before and after. So I'm just pressing the Y key and it gives you that before and after look. Now, what's good with this, when you're looking at before and after, you can kind of see where you're at and what you want to do to the overall image. So what I can now do is use this as a reference point of this is what the true colors are. And obviously this is the moody kind of atmospheric image, so to speak. So looking at that, I think if we click on the brush tool and come to the actual mountains here, if I click on the show selected mask overlay, so I darkened them, but I think I've darkened them a little bit too much. So I think I need to just bring the exposure up just a smidgen, just to bring a little bit of light back into them, and then add some contrast to counterbalance that. Okay. And then also, if I come down to here, so now we can just have a look and blend this a little bit better. So we don't want to go too yellow, don't want to go too blue because it just looks fake. So now it's just a case of, okay, let's just really fine tune this, and we can change the hue and saturation of that blue. So now it would just be a case of, you know, fine adjustments and just seeing what looks right and what doesn't, and that is then entirely up to you. And again, with these here, I can play around with these more and just really fine tune them. You can see there that if I add that blue in, it's what it does to that sky. It just makes it pop out a little bit more. And then if we come back up here to the basics of where we started, we can just start looking at some of the other tools. So the dehaze and the clarity. Now with clarity, I think you've got to be a little bit careful when you're doing landscapes and texture, because it can really start ripping the image apart. And I actually don't really like adding too much clarity or texture to landscape pictures, because it ruins it a little bit, I think. And then we've got the color temperature, and you can see what that's doing there, because we've added all them different colors. It's having a massive effect on the overall image now, isn't it? So we kind of need to leave that where it is. But that now, if we come back to here, so come back to the tone curve that we were doing, we can have a little look and just play with this one now and just see if we can manipulate this just to get a little bit more contrast back into the image. So you can see there in the blacks, it's doing quite a lot. You see? There we go. Something like that. So another thing we can do to fine tune this grass, because even though I like the red and the green, we can click on the little tool here, come over, click, and there's a lot of orange in there. So we can pull and push that and just fine tune them colors a little bit more. So if we don't want too much red, we can just pull that down. Same with the hues. We can look at any area, pull and push, and you'll see what that's doing. So you can end up with a completely different image to what you started with color wise. But all I'm doing now is using this just to balance things out a little bit. And there we go. You can see what that's doing there. So I think it's about there. Yeah, something like that. Okay, so if we look, there you go. There's a before and after. So that is my edit. That's kind of what I would do with regards to actually, you know, editing a landscape and making it a little bit more dark and a little bit more moody, and just, you know, bringing out the blues and the skies and just adding this kind of cinematic look, I suppose. But each image is very, very different. Each image is going to need individual treatment like this, but you can use this as a starting point. So the settings that I've shown you tonight will work for most images, really, but you would then just have to tweak it, and that is the skill and time, is just sitting there and playing with these colors and just seeing what works and what doesn't work. But like I said, when it comes to stuff like this, it's a creative look, and it's yeah, it's just another way of editing. So I saved a previous edit, which was here, landscape one, and you can see the difference in colors there. So mine's got quite a red hue to it, where the actual preset that I saved, which was a previous edit, you can see there's not a lot of red in there. So I could use that as a starting point to actually, maybe not a starting point, a finishing point to come back to the hues, and instead of bringing it down, I could push it back up. And again, that's going to look a little bit more lifelike. But yeah, so that's pretty much what I would do. And that preset that I've saved here, if you look, you can see that the settings are exactly the same. But I bring this down here, there's just a few different tweaks. If you look in here, you can see there, look, I've just moved some colors around. That's all I've done, and it's just made it a little bit more dramatic. So yeah, it is just a case now of just working the image and just finding out, you know, what does what and what you want the image to look like. But yeah, it's a nice moody landscape. So I hope that's helped. I hope you enjoyed that. If you're in the VIP group, I will post this landscape preset up for you, so you can have a play and see what you get. And it'd be interesting to see what your end results are. But yeah, it's all good fun. And like I said, this is by no means a correction, as in it's not meant to be realistic. It is more of a dramatic edit, so you can be a little bit more creative and artistic with your images. You know, from the last couple of weeks, I've done a moody portrait, I've done moody wildlife, so I thought I'd do a moody landscape. And yeah, I think it works. I do like it. We can, to finish it off, we could bring some of the saturation down, and the vibrance as well, just to make it even more moody. And there you go. It's quite a stark kind of look. If you look at that, and you can see there's a massive difference within the colors. So it's basically color manipulation, and color theory is so important. You know, the reason why I can do these edits is because I understand color. So understanding that the tone curve gives you contrast, but the hue, saturation, luminance, what they do, how they counterbalance each other, why they counterbalance each other, and the same with the color grading. So, you know, that's really important that you understand color theory. Okay, so I'm glad you all enjoyed that. Good. Like I said, guys in the VIPs, I will post this preset up for you now. You can have a play. Don't show Jamie it, because he'll have a heart attack. But I hope you all enjoyed that. Thanks for joining. And if you want to join my next 5-step blueprint to photography challenge, you can start next month, 17th of May, I think it is. Yeah, it's 17th of May. DSLRguruchallenge.com. You can go there and spend 5 days with me, and I will show you how to get off auto. So please come and join me for that if you haven't already. If you have in the past, you're more than welcome to come and join again. Take care, everyone, and I'll see you all soon.